I think everyone has that one piece of media that nothing can top. It could be a song, it could be a movie, it could be a game. It's just that one thing that it's the peak and everything comes close, but it'll never quite reach that point for them. And for me, that was Breath of the Wild. I remember when that game came out in 2017, beating it on my Wii U and just falling in love with it. I've beaten that game probably 10 times, 20 times. It feels fresh every time I play it. It is just such a unique experience that I've never been able to recreate anywhere else. And in about an hour now, Tears of the Kingdom comes out. And to say I'm excited is an understatement. I've been thinking about it for weeks now. I've watched the trailer in every language. I've watched it multiple times. I keep talking about it with everyone I know, probably to an annoying point, but I'm really excited for it, and I hope it lives up to my expectations. Alright, so I've beaten the game twice now, and I have a lot I want to say about it. My favorite part of Breath of the Wild was the idea of where can't I go? It felt like every mountain you saw, every body of water, every tower, you could go and interact with, and it was insanely satisfying to do so. It was really fun to find something you wanted to do, scope out the area once you got there, and find a new thing to do. Tears of the Kingdom multiplied this feeling by 100 for me. The sky and the depths add so much to this feeling. Running around the surface and looking up and seeing something you want to go interact with and finding the nearest tower or way to get up there was really cool. And then finding holes in the ground, diving down, and going into this creepy, eerie environment. There was so much to do, and I got absolutely lost in every aspect of this world. It felt like I never spent more than 30 seconds in one area because I'd find something new, like a shrine, a tower, something that interested me, and I'd just go and do it. It also introduces the idea of what can't I do, and it takes it to an extreme I would have never expected. Ultra Hand opens a world that I don't think we're ever going to see the potential of for years to come. I thought I was pretty creative with the stuff I built, building hovercrafts, building just anything I could think of. And then I'd open Twitter and I'd see the most mind-boggling thing I've ever seen. People are insane, and it's only going to get more and more crazy with time. The same goes for the fuse ability. I thought I was pretty creative with how I was using it, but I remember just yesterday I saw someone on Twitter use the bow and arrow to freeze a part of the water, take a stick, fuse it with the block of ice they made, and it turned into an ice wand that they were making platforms in the water with. Not only can I'm surprised that they thought of it, I can't believe the developers accounted for it. There's going to be so many crazy things we find 1-2 years after this game. The only new ability I didn't really care for was Ascend. I think it's super cool on paper, but for the most part, I forgot I had it, and it felt like the answer to some niche puzzles, and it had more potential, but I don't think they fully tapped into it. The music this time around definitely felt like it was a step up from Breath of the Wild. It felt a lot more involved than it did in like not only town areas, just like walking around the world. The sky area has this lofty feel to it, and it matches the environment really well. I like that when you're diving, it gave me like a Skyward Sword vibe of falling. The depths has this really creepy and eerie music, which adds to like that super dark and depressing environment. Shrines have gotten a major upgrade. And most of the time in Breath of the Wild, it felt like you had the tools at the beginning, and every shrine felt like you're gonna have to use this ability to figure it out, which was good. But in this game, you have all the tools with Ultra Hand and Fuse, and you can do it any way you want. I didn't do all of them, but for like 99% of them, I felt like I was doing it unintentionally, like not the way the developers intended. Finding your own solutions and feeling like you're breaking the game, but still playing within like the confines of what the game developers accounted for was so much fun. This game debatably has the greatest Master Sword pull of all time. You are on a dragon. The sky is golden. I think it's better than Ocarina's. I think it's better than Twilight Princess's. They are going to struggle to top this,
but knowing Zelda, they probably will somehow.
The dungeons. These definitely feel like a step up from Breath of the Wild. They have much deeper and cooler aesthetics for all of them. There's more to do. It feels like there's more puzzles. They just feel harder. And I'm so happy they went this route. The ones in Breath of the Wild aren't bad. I think they're good, but they feel so samey. It's the same aesthetic, same vibe, pretty much the same fights with the Calamity Ganon except for a couple elemental changes. I think all of the aesthetics are things we've seen before in previous games, but the variety is welcome nonetheless. The one that really sticks out to me is the Fire Temple and the vibe that gives off. It has a similar theme to Ocarina of Time with that chanting. There's minecart rails everywhere. It left the biggest imprint on me, and I spent a lot of time exploring that and just having a ton of fun doing it. The Lightning Temple was a really close second for me. It is this monstrous 7-floor temple that erupts from the desert. The light puzzles are things you would see probably in like the Spirit Temple. It has a similar vibe to that. But I got pretty stuck on this one. It was one of those situations where the shrines where I felt like I was doing an unorthodox answer to solve the puzzles. But it was a lot of fun, and I really enjoy the aesthetic of this environment. The Wind and the Water Temple felt the most Breath of the Wild to me. They're pretty short. They're not too hard. They're fine. They're pretty good. But they definitely felt like they carried a lot of the mistakes that Breath of the Wild had. It's not technically a dungeon, but the quest to find the 5th stage in that area, I really liked a lot. Going around the 4 corners and building back the body was a cool spin on the unlock the 4 things like the other couple dungeons had. And I just like the aesthetic, I like the vibe. The puzzles were pretty challenging. It took me a while to figure out. I think it was like the right arm. That one was tough, but I really liked it. The only thing that ruined it for me was the boss fight at the end of it.
The construct fight was pretty terrible. There wasn't a lot going on. It was in a boxing arena. It felt really uninspired. It was pretty gimmicky. I hate how the construct controls, so that made it way less fun for me. Definitely the weakest in the game. I would say for the most part, the bosses were a pretty mixed bag for me. The Fire Temple, for how amazing it was, all for it to have a Goma fight at the end, was disappointing to say the very least. It's not bad or unfun or anything, but it really just isn't anything special or challenging at all. The Muktarok fight in the Water Temple was also very terrible and debatably as bad as the Construct fight. The second phase of this fight is so annoying. Using Sidon's power to try to clear the mud feels futile because he just keeps jumping around spreading more and more and more mud, and it went on for way too long. And it's not hard. It's not a hard fight. It's just annoying. I thought the Queen Gibdo fight was actually pretty good. Phase 2 involves you doing like crowd control and taking out some pillars before you really focus on the Queen Gibdo. I thought it was pretty good. It made good use of Riju's ability. It wasn't bad. The Wind Temple is what really shines here though. The fight with Colgera is easily the best out of all the temples, and is debatably probably top 5 in the game. It makes just great use of the game's actual mechanics. It doesn't really revolve around using Tullin's ability that much as a gimmick. Every fight outside of this revolves around using the Sage's ability to find the weak spot or be able to hit the opponent or whatever. But you don't really need Tullin's in this fight. You can do it pretty much all just on your own skill. You use bullet time. It was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it. It was easily the most memorable fight from the temples. There were also some really, really cool optional boss fights. Of course, the Hinox are back. There were some underground that were like Stallox, I think. Those, I'm pretty sure, returned from Breath of the Wild. They're cool and all. But Gleeok. It was so cool to see Gleeok again. I really like how they adapted him for a 3D space. He was pretty terrifying. And the 3 elemental, like King Gleeok, he was tough. But the fight was so much fun, and I'm really glad I did it. Ganondorf. What a fucking fight, man. He has 3 different types of weapons. He has a sword, a spear, and a club, and you have to get used to parrying and dodging all of these. At one point, he flurry rushes your stuff, and when he did that for the first time, I audibly gasped. I could not believe it. when phase 2 hits and the health bar goes from where you think it's going to go, but it just keeps going to the end of the screen. I gasped there too. I thought that was insane. And then phase 3 was genuinely so hard. Every time you try to hit him, he will flurry rush your stuff and you have to flurry rush him back. It is very difficult. It took me a long time. And then he turns into a dragon and it becomes like a Shadow of the Colossus fight, which was sick. It was so much fun. And that final strike was so satisfying to hit. I do have my gripes with the game, though. One of my biggest issues is that at the end of all 4 temples, they play the same cutscene, just slightly altered depending on which one you're at. I know they had to do this. Narratively, it's the only way it's going to make sense. You can visit them in any order you want, so telling stuff out of order is going to really confuse the player. But it's still annoying, and by the 4th one, I skipped it. I wish there was a way for them to break up the imprisoning war so that it made sense, but it is what it is, I guess. I am not a huge fan of the new sages and their abilities. Tulin is an okay character. He's just like trying to prove his dad wrong, that he's coming to his own. But compared to Rivali, he feels like such a weak character. And his ability is pretty much Rivali's, but it's horizontal, which just automatically makes it worse because it just makes traveling harder. And I honestly turned it off at one point because I just wasn't using it. I hate Yunobo. I hate this guy. When Daruk says Goro, I can look past it because he's sick. When Yunobo says it, I want him to shut up. I hate this guy. He's so annoying. He's very similar to Tulin personality-wise, but he feels younger and just... I don't like him. And his ability is also terrible, especially compared to Daruk's. I only used it as like an alternative to when I didn't want to waste bombs. And for that to be a Sage ability is super disappointing. Sidon and Riju return, and I think they went a great direction with their character development. They both become leaders in their own aspects, and they're really growing into the role and becoming more mature. But these abilities are so terrible. Sidon, you get like this water slash. Mifa revived you. How do we downgrade this much? It's terrible. I don't think I ever used it except outside of the boss fight. And Riju's is Urbosa's Fury, but somehow worse because you have to waste an arrow. And it takes way longer to recharge, and it takes way longer to actually hit the opponent because you have to wait for it to like grow into their like vicinity. I don't know how he took so many steps backwards, but very disappointing. The absolute worst aspect of this game is Gloom. I hate Gloom. It's the worst aspect of Dark Souls, and they put it in a Zelda game. It is so absolutely disappointing that they did this. It's not a fun mechanic to play around. There's probably some gear that prevents it. I know there's some food that heals it because I miraculously found it, but it's still annoying, and having to backtrack to heal it if you don't have any food or gear, it's not fun. I wish they didn't add it. Ganondorf, as amazing of a fight as it is, hits you with Gloom, and it's annoying. It's not fun. It's just annoying.
I think the thing I missed the most from Breath of the Wild would have to be the Guardians. The Guardians were terrifying. Every time you heard that theme and that laser appeared on you, it was pretty scary. And there's no good equivalent to that in Tears of the Kingdom. You kind of lose that aspect of there might be a Guardian around the corner or something like that. I also think some of the worst mechanics from Breath of the Wild are unfortunately back. I've always hated rain. I don't think it's a fun mechanic, but they brought it back. You still can't climb during it without specific gear. I really hate it. I felt like they doubled down on weapon durability, which, I mean, good for them. You got a lot of complaints about it, and you doubled down. I know Fuse is supposed to make it better, but I ran out of stuff this time around, and that never happened to me during Breath of the Wild. And I feel like there was just less variety of weapons because of Fuse, which was also disappointing. Some of my favorite weapons, like the electric greatsword, were just not here. And sure, you can like make a Fuse version of it, but I really miss that weapon and I wanted to fuse something with it. It also feels like it's impossible to get enough money to afford anything in this game. Like, it feels way harder than Breath of the Wild. I was farming every single amiibo I know just so I had materials that I could sell and maybe make enough money to afford some of this gear. It's insane. I'm pretty sure I saw an armor piece that was 7,000 rupees. That's why? That's ridiculous. There was probably a side quest I missed that would have lowered the price, but come on.
Even as I record this video, I beat Tears of the Kingdom again. Words cannot describe how much this game means to me. I know for the next 10, 20, 30 years, it's going to feel just as fresh as it did the first day I played this game, because Tears of the Kingdom is an experience, and I hope you get to experience it too.